Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Do you ever feel like all of the people on Earth are moving in one direction, and you want to be the lone salmon that just rises up and goes against the current, and just feels like you're the only one going in another direction? That's kind of how I feel when we're going to talk about Representative John Delaney. We should say former representative, the former representative of the 6th District in the House of Representatives for the state of Maryland. A lot of people have been putting John Delaney under fire. They've been encouraging him to drop out of the presidential race, and it's mostly coming from the Mike Gravel campaign and the supporters of Senator Mike Gravel. We've talked a lot about Mike Gravel on this channel. He's a very interesting personality, and definitely a senator who has some interesting accomplishments. But in this moment, during this upload, I would like to discuss the candidacy of John Delaney, because there are a few things that I believe a lot of people are overlooking. It doesn't mean that I would endorse him or something like that. I can't endorse any of the Democrats running for president, not to mention any of the other parties, third parties, independents, all up and down the aisles. I can't endorse any of them, because why? Well, life is messy, and there are a lot of shitheads in the world, let's just say that. Nobody's perfect, and it shows on the political spectrum. But you're going to talk about somebody like John Delaney. The heart and soul of his campaign is centered on bipartisanship. Out of all of the candidates running, he has addressed the concept of bipartisanship more than any other person. Yes, some people talk about fixing the broken political system. Yes, some people talk about political corruption. But a candidate whose biggest issue is bipartisanship has an important message. And I think that I will listen to anybody who's going to stand up and say something about that. Liberals this, conservatives that. These are fictions that have been created for us. Someone was even commenting on something about how the liberals and the conservatives are at war. And I'm just like, no, they flipping are not. I mean, sure, yeah, people have different personality types, and you can maybe perhaps predict that certain personality types are going to go in these types of directions and support these social issues. But to say that liberals and conservatives are at war is just a statement that is plain untrue. These are things that have been meant to divide humanity, to divide the populations of America so they can't unify and overthrow the existing political system. And somebody like John Delaney stood up to that, and he said that bipartisanship was the biggest thing that we needed to do to move the country forward. I would love to get a copy of his book, The Right Answer, but as I've said on the channel many times, I'm not so big about getting books, paying money for books about politics or religion. If the library has it, sure, but I doubt they will. But the thing is, though, he's probably covered a lot of it in his speeches and interviews on television. I don't like that he titled his book The Right Answer. I thought that was way too arrogant. I believe it came from a speech from someone else, but like there's a reason why he titled it that, but I just thought that was a bit of an arrogant move. He could have called it something better. Why not call it America United or something like that? Maybe it sounds a little cheesy, but The Right Answer was the name of a book he wrote for the campaign. I wasn't a big fan of that, but I'd still like to read it all the same. A lot of people are saying, though, that we should not unify. Is that right? People are saying that the United States of America should not unify. It comes to us from a lot of progressive circles that are right now just calling for an end to the Republican Party, or just saying that the politics of the Republican Party are unacceptable. The Tax Wall Street Party has said this very clearly. Their ambition is to put an end to the Republican Party and split the Democratic Party into two factions, the pro-labor and the pro-financier. Why on earth would they want that? It's because they say that the Republicans have too many reactionary issues, too many knee-jerk reactionary issues to the social issues, and they bog down the discussions and political discourse with things about gay rights and transgenderism, as well as things about building the wall and such. They view this, once again, just kind of reiterating their platform, and they're saying that we'll never get anywhere as long as there is a Republican Party. We need to split the Democratic Party into two factions, the pro-labor and the pro-financier, and saying that we need to identify the people that are ripping us off, the Wall Street mega banks. I do agree that Wall Street, the mega banks, the hedge fund guys, that is a big issue. because that's a concentration of wealth leading to a concentration of power. But to say that you're going to end the Republican Party, it takes a guy like John Delaney to stand up and sort of say, a lot of these people are just pushing things that cannot happen. Unrealistic campaign promises. And John Delaney has been somebody who's stood up and said that so many times. This idea that you're just going to end the Republican Party and just get somebody who's going to bulldoze or steamroll right over all the Republicans in the House and in the Senate is most likely just pie in the sky. They're just selling you something that is far out and extreme. And he was actually trying to focus on things that can happen not only in our lifetime, but also during 4 years of a presidency. And that's what the John Delaney campaign is actually offering. It's not just some far out things that are just going to be like progressive ideals. Oh yeah, you can strive toward an ideal, but we also need sometimes to have solutions that can be put into effect here and now. Some people cannot wait for the multi-generational change and the evolution of thought. They need solutions right now. That's one of the things that John Delaney has talked so much about with universal health care. He supports universal health care, except not for the Medicare for All plan. And he was booed at the California State Democratic Convention for not supporting Medicare for All. But the thing is, Amy Klobuchar also supports him. And what about somebody named Joe Biden? Why does he got to pass on that? Where was he on Medicare for All? He didn't endorse that. Do you see Joe Biden getting booed at other rallies because of this? They were booing John Delaney because, for starters, he's not very famous. And for seconds, he's someone who is saying, hey, these guys are just offering you unrealistic campaign promises. And anybody who stands up and says, we need to unify, the American people need to come together, have realistic solutions, actually have a plan that can be put into action, and it's not going to be attractive to your partisan talking points, is going to be feared. Because it's not an attractive narrative. It's not sexy. It's not meant to make you just feel, oh, I'm better than this other side of the country. My side is right, the other side is wrong. It's about saying, none of that stuff is important. Let's get down to the heart and soul of the issues and put ideas into action that can actually bring about solutions and improve quality of life for countless Americans. John Delaney was also somebody who was opposed to the $100 billion reparations package that is a Democratic talking point now, supported by various political candidates, but it's like, not all of them support $100 billion specifically. That came to us from the Marianne Williamson campaign, that exact number. But John Delaney said, do not give cash reparations. He does not support the $100 billion reparations package. Instead, improve the inner cities, especially in education. If you improve education in the inner city schools, it will improve the quality of life for everybody living there. That is not just an African American issue. We have countless minorities living in the inner city schools, not to mention just any other person who's not a minority living there. Those people definitely existed too, and they should not be forgotten. One of the things about John Delaney is, though, a lot of people have been targeting him, the Mike Gravel campaign that we mentioned, for using his own money. He was, I believe, he the sixth richest person in Congress or something, net worth of $92 million, something like that. I believe he was the sixth richest person, but also the representative from the 6th Congressional District. I hope I didn't just get those two numbers mixed up. But he was one of the wealthiest members of Congress when he was there. He was accused of buying his House seat. He's in the House, not the Senate, excuse me, I misspoke. But it's like, what they don't get is, if John Delaney is self-funding his primary, he's not bought and paid for. How important is that? Are you listening, Cory Booker? Did you hear that, Senator Booker from New Jersey? It's like he is not bought and paid for. And that is incredibly important in the political world, to have a politician that is not in the pockets of anybody else. He can actually get up there and say things and do a plan that isn't being controlled by anyone else if he's using his own money. And the Mike Gravel campaign has dug up the mud. They've dug up all the data on that, and they say, yes, he is using his own money. I have an issue with that, though. Donald Trump is a billionaire, so they say. I mean, all right. I mean, most people think he's a billionaire or he's mega rich. If we put John Delaney in the White House, and I'm fully aware that he'll never be president, but I'm just kind of talking about the kind of other side of the issue with his campaign now. I know it's unlikely that he will become president, but if somehow John Delaney became president, We would be going from an oligarchy to a plutocracy, from a society controlled by the few to a society controlled by the wealthy. That would mean that you would have to either be a billionaire or a multi-millionaire to become the President of the United States. Why do I say that? Not only because Donald Trump is a billionaire, he self-financed his primary. And John Delaney, to be fair, is not going to self-finance the whole primary. If he stays in until New Hampshire, he said he was going to use his own money. And the Mike Gravel campaign dug this up. To their credit, I don't dislike Mike Gravel. I think he is awesome. This is just the other side of the issue. And they were like, he's using his own money. Guess what? He said that from the very beginning. He was the first candidate to declare that he was running for president back in 2017, and he said he was going to use his own money up until New Hampshire. This wasn't a secret. And I don't believe for a second that all of the political commentators have no idea who he is. They're like, hey, who's this guy, John Delaney? Even somebody like Trevor Noah was saying he doesn't know who John Delaney was. He declared in 2017, and he's been on all of the major cable news shows. They know who John Delaney is. They're just going along with the narrative because it's much more attractive to be like, hey, this guy's not important and we can just push him to the side so we can focus on Bernie and on Biden and on Elizabeth Warren and on Kamala Harris, as well as other people like Mayor Pete and Beto O'Rourke from time to time. John Delaney does not have a platform that will make you feel so good. But if I've learned anything in life, feeling good is not the end goal. Just because something improves your dopamine status for a little while, it doesn't mean that that is the plan that you should have if you're the President of the United States. Increasing people's dopamine and hormones, your serotonin, norepinephrine, just making you feel light and airy for a little while. Or how about adrenaline? Someone who gets you really hyped up and ready for battle. That's not what the presidency should be about. The presidency should be about someone who actually has the ability to be the president, not for the Republicans, not for the Democrats, not for the liberals, not for the conservatives, but for everybody. And to challenge that dynamic, the way that John Delaney did, is something that is feared by anyone who supports it. The problem is, though, it's also very beneficial. Anti-partisanship. Unity. America coming together. When has the unity of America been viewed as a bad thing? People working together for the betterment of our own nation? Is that a bad thing? I'd say that's a pretty good thing. And yeah, we have our political differences, but how are we going to overcome that? By more divisiveness, like what we said about some of these people and their plans from the beginning. Very difficult to accomplish in that particular fashion. So when we're sort of looking at this exact dynamic, I mean, I don't care that John Delaney is using his own money. I think that it's a multi-sided issue, but I mean, I think on the one hand, it's good he's not bought and paid for. On the other hand, the problem would be that it's going to be sort of turning oligarchy into plutocracy. Maybe that is something we actually should care about, so I would take that back. Poorly phrased sentence on my part. Once again, though, nobody's perfect, and it's a messed up world. And that is one of the things that we have to do. We have to realize the politicians are not your friends, right? I don't know if I'd want to be friends with John Delaney. I don't know if I'd want to sit down and have coffee with him. So many of the politicians that I follow are people that I probably wouldn't want to socialize with. Mike Gravel, I would love to just sit down with Mike Gravel and, just like, I probably wouldn't drink coffee. I probably would drink tea. Coffee gets me all angry and hyped up these days. But a lot of the people I mentioned on this channel, such as, say somebody even like Seymour Hersh that we were talking about during the Nixon upload, where it's like, I wouldn't want to have coffee with him. I wouldn't want to chill with Seymour Hersh, but maybe I could learn something from him, or Daniel Pipes, or Webster Tarpley, or all the people that I've talked about in the past. It's like, you can learn things from people, but you might not necessarily like their personality. And I'd put John Delaney in that category. But the thing is, politicians aren't about people who are just gonna be cool. This isn't a popularity contest. You're not running for president of the 5th grade anymore. It's like we actually gotta look at who is going to bring the plan and have the leadership skills, the anticipation, decision-making, and foresight to put this into action and improve quality of life for everyone. You might not like liberals, you might not like conservatives, but the President of the United States still has to do something about it. The President of the United States still has to intervene in these issues. What about the things associated with the Middle East and such? Do you want Tim Ryan in the White House who's going to be like, yeah, we need to increase involvement in the Middle East? or something, because it always works so well when we intervene excessively. I mean, Tim Ryan was a guy I spoke favorably of in the past, but he's just really kind of pushed things a little bit too far. Also saying that he supports impeachment of Donald Trump, except he wants to go through committee review first. Oh, bureaucracy, if I'm pronouncing that word correctly, which I might not be. That is another thing that's really just going to be bogging things down. Yeah, Tim Ryan, why don't you just tell everybody that you're a giant bureaucrat? That's not going to help anything, and his favorability ratings have plummeted down. And even somebody like me who spoke favorably of what Tim Ryan had said in the past about social and emotional learning, about what he said about organic green living and the restoring the American family farm, he has gone down. Somebody such as John Delaney, though, I told you I was interested in getting a copy of his book, The Right Answer, which gives his plan for the nation, but it's like, I heard his story enough about his father's a union electrician. We heard that thing so many times, rags to riches story. We get it, but at the same time, John Delaney's life story does shed a certain amount of insight. It's like a window into his character. Started 2 companies, enormously successful, youngest CEO to ever open the New York Stock Exchange, became a congressman, and some people are like, he bought his way into Congress because he had lots of money and he could do it in a safe seat that was for Democrats. He's an achiever. He is someone who is very accomplished, and he is very, very good at strategy. It's difficult to become the President of the United States, but he might become governor of Maryland one day. He might get back his Senate seat. He might, I said the Senate again. He is in the House of Representatives. He was a 3-term House member from Maryland, the 6th Congressional District, Montgomery County, Frederick County, all the way to Hancock. It's a very large congressional district. Almost all of Western Maryland is in the 6th Congressional District. And if you ever have some free time, look at the congressional districts in Maryland. The 2nd Congressional District looks like a messed up birthmark. Massive gerrymandering going on in the state of Maryland. And yeah, that gives you some window into my character, the kind of person who sits around looking at photos of congressional districts and such. Maps, rather, we should say. Yeah, okay, I'm not exactly the most social of butterflies, but I digress from that. If you're going to look at some guy like John Delaney, he had a plan. He's a very accomplished person. He has ideas that can be put into action. And even as I speak favorably of him, and I think that he could be a good leader, and he could actually be a presidential candidate for everybody. And, you know, like, the only thing I would say about that is that would take away a lot of people's reasons to be angry. It would take away people's reasons to be upset at the other side. It would take away people's reasons to be partisan if we actually had that type of person who could unify the country. I don't care that he's a moderate. It's not about the labels. He calls himself a moderate, a centrist. I don't care about any of that. Labels mean nothing. It means about the answers, the solutions, and what you're going to be doing in terms of leadership. One area where I would push back is John Delaney has been very adamant that he wants to bring back the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP. I once signed a petition against it, then I thought maybe it's a good idea. The massive trade deal with all of the Asian nations, Delaney wants to use it for geopolitical strategic usage. I mean, like, to kind of be a counterbalance to the Chinese. But the problem is, there's an environmental protections issue in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. If a nation out of that 14 bloc members group says that they have an ecological protection, an environmental activist issue that prevents a company from doing business in that nation, then that country's government has to pay the nation money. It would be like, say, off the coast of Peru, Exxon wants to drill, and Peru says, well, you can't drill there. That is a protected ecological site. The government of Peru has to pay Exxon money. And I just think anything associated with that type of practice is just a bad policy. It sets a very bad precedent. It's one of the things that is very rarely talked about with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I heard it in a lecture from the economist Michael Hudson. He's also some guy that I probably would not want to socialize with. But it's like, I mean, that would be an area where I would kind of take exception to some things about John Delaney. Once again, though, just because somebody is president, it does not mean that they're going to put in all of their plans. It does not mean they're going to keep every campaign promise. It's about who do you trust running the nation. And in 2020, do you want to be Donald Trump or do you want somebody else? And one of the things that we're going to have to look at is John Delaney's healthcare plan. I will say this. It gives everybody healthcare, and it's less than half the cost of Medicare for all. We're talking about more than $16 trillion in savings. More than that. And it's like, it's something to think about. And maybe it is unrealistic that we're going to eliminate private insurance, bring it down to zero. I was opposed to Obamacare because it made the private insurance companies bigger, and I thought there must be a better plan out there for healthcare. I don't know everything about healthcare, but it's like there must have been something better than Obamacare, a way we could improve the system. And what John Delaney calls his plan Better Care. I always called it the universal public-private plan because it has public insurance and private insurance working together. John Delaney is somebody who has been overlooked by a lot of people. They're not attracted to his campaign, and I've been also critical of him for saying not enough boldness. It wasn't until he took the bold stance against Medicare for all that people started noticing him. Before that, he was at 1% in the polls, 0% in the polls, funding himself. The only person that's probably liking him on social media is me and some girl who has a bunch of rainbows on her Twitter profile. But, it's like, I just wanted to sort of play some counterbalance to a lot of the hate that's going on toward John Delaney. I don't endorse him. I don't endorse any single candidate. But it's like, I thought he contributed some things to the discussion. And I will listen to anybody who is going to stand up and say that America can become united.